Hello, happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
Hope it's going well for you. Hope the weather's fine wherever you are. Welcome to the Two Matts Q&A session brought to you by the New European Newspaper. Should we dive straight in?
Let's just go for it. With large parts of Europe leaning bonkers right, I love that, France, Italy, Hungary, the Netherlands and Germany to name a few, is it not time the EU thought of joining the UK? Starmer could set up the Union of Liberal Democracy and ask other nations to apply. But my question is really this: does Europe's onward march towards right-wing populism not make even the most fervent rejoiner hesitate just a little? Paul Milliken.
What an excellent question.
It's a really good question.
Yeah. And what a great idea, by the way. Maybe this is the way.
Maybe this is how we do it.
Yes, they rejoin
us. They come to us.
Yes.
You know, they're coming home.
Yeah. But the heart of the question is a very fair one, which is, you know, is there a sort of inexorable drift towards the right now in Europe, and is that a club we want to be? Well, there is part of.
There is a definite drift, and people. So, you know, people who say that the coalition that was built up to beat Le Pen in the assembly elections in France, that marks the end of Le Penism and the far right in France, are silly, because the far right is doing very well in Europe, but it's not inexorable. And so, you know, one of the reasons I think, you know, many reasons I think we should be in there is to offer a counterweight. Now, I love the idea of them coming to join us. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I don't. In a funny way, my reaction is it makes me want to be in there all the more.
Yeah. This was always the thing about that I could never understand about the argument to leave, was that given the impact that community obviously has on our lives, whether you like it or not, to not be at the table just seemed to be stupid to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no question that the EU is in various forms of crises. Yeah. But then everything is. And so how much better it would be if Starmer was at the top table of the EU trying to explain, you know, that what he's called snake oil populism is not the way, and here's another way, and he might prevail, he might not, but it would be better.
Be interesting to see how Starmer gets on with Maloney, for instance, because there was a definite frisson relationship with Sunak.
I mean, Maloney, I think, is in a funny way. One doesn't want to exaggerate the normality of people, because she was a fascist in her teens, you know, but she's more amenable, let's go no further than that, to collaborative measures than Orban. You know, Orban in Hungary is
he's a throwback.
He's he's a bad guy. Yeah. You know, he is a true believer in the autocratic state, and you know, it should worry people that he went to see Putin and then he went to see Trump. Yeah, you know, he's not a good guy. Yeah. And so it would be good if we had our good guys in there.
That's right. Well, great question.
So that's our kind of, but it's a great question. Paul. It raises a very important point.
Yeah. Next question, please.
I've been listening to a few interviews with new Labour ministers, and they're constantly asked, explain this policy in a sentence. This infuriates me beyond imagination. Are the media to blame for the lack of political understanding amongst the general public and the constant soundbite politics that made up the last 14 years, or even longer back, maybe? How do we get back to detailed policy-oriented debates? Jonathan Happs, great question.
Great question. And how do we get back? No chance, because unfortunately the human race has now evolved to a species with the attention span of goldfish.
Well, lower, actually. Yeah. 2008, I think, was the year in which our attention span fell below the goldfish. Yeah. So that's that.
Well, I mean, so my theory, and it's certainly not unique to me, I'm not saying anything outrageously clever, but as Marshall McLuhan, the great Canadian sociologist, how would you describe him? Anthropologist?
Media scientist or something like that. Yeah.
Said, you know, the message is the medium. And what he meant by that is that not only does the message have to be contained within the medium it is, like television changes the message or newspapers, but the actual medium itself becomes the characteristics of the medium become the characteristics of the message.
Yes.
And the medium that has changed politics beyond all recognition is Twitter.
Yeah.
And the short form brevity of a tweet. Very much so. And not only the shortness of it, but the imperative to rush to tweet. Yeah. So you get now people tweeting things in hot take response in a very short sentence that 6 months later become government legislation.
That's true. That's
and they because they've tweeted it without thought, it becomes fixed in stone. It's almost unerasable.
I mean, my honest view is that, I mean, I'm on. You're not, and it's very sensible. You're not on X, Twitter, are you?
No, I came off having done exactly what I've now complained of, and thought this is doing me no good.
But I still use it to sort of post articles and repost articles I like. But I certainly think that politicians should stay off it.
Yeah, because
the number of people who regret it is manifold. Yeah. I mean, I think there's an interesting point here, which is what I would say is I don't think we should welcome this development. So one of my bugbears is bloody Axios, which has this my least favourite book ever called Smart Brevity. And the implication of this is that, articles and books and things are really, no one has time for them anymore. So the really cool thing is to say it in, a sentence, and that's what we should all be doing.
Yeah.
And my answer to you, Axios, if you're listening, is fuck off, because I don't believe that, and I don't think we should yield to this tendency. And whilst I totally agree with everything you said, and I don't think we're going back to people reading white papers or anything like that, in as much as they ever did, I don't think that we should just accept that. When reporters, I mean, to Jonathan's point, when reporters say explain this policy in a sentence, that is a dumbass thing to say.
Yes.
What I think the way round it is for politicians, if they are seeking to say things in capsule form, that they don't speak technocratically.
Yeah.
They speak about how the policy that they're trying to sell and advertise, how does it affect you?
Yeah.
What does this mean for me? What does it mean for the voters? How. Don't say you're going to launch a child. I mean, you can say if you want, but you're going to launch a child poverty task force. Say in terms what that might mean to someone who is listening, who is either concerned about the issue or, more to the point, affected by it.
Yeah,
and I think that's important.
I think the other side to this is the kind of increasing dismissive approach towards people who actually know what they're talking about.
Yes.
And you can, it predates Michael Gove significantly, but when Gove said people are fed up of experts,
he was appealing to
there was a populist statement, and you can see it dripping into all sorts of formats.
Well, health policy, for example. Yeah. I mean, one of the horrible long tails of COVID has been the idea that everyone's a medical expert.
That's
now.
Right. Well, all that, like take Question Time, for instance, as a program, which used to be people asking a question and then you would have an array of serious people talking for quite a lot longer than they do now.
Oh, God, yeah.
And the reason they got longer to talk about it than now is because Fiona Bruce, I assume under instruction, keeps asking the fucking audience what they think.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, this isn't me being elitist or anti-democratic. I want to hear the question and then what the people who have influence say.
Exactly.
Because what you get into is this cycle of the audience saying something with or without foundation, and then people wanting to please the audience all the time.
Yes.
And I've always thought, Brexit, the referendum, is the absolute apex of that.
Oh, yeah.
Absolute nonsense. And I always think, would you walk into a motorway service station in this country, right, and ask for a show of hands on anything remotely important on the spot? Because a motorway service station is a cross-section of society. Everybody's got to use them. You get a fair fix on what Britain looks like if you walk into a motorway service station, right? Go in there and ask them, should we leave the European Union? And then live with it. Yes. It's madness.
It's madness. And I think also, if you leave it to the bad guys, you'll get enemies of the people and crush saboteurs. You need to... and I think this is, and I'm going to shout out for the New European, which is that it's a publication that has wit and mischief on its cover and in its articles, but it also has long reads that explain important stuff.
Yeah.
And I hope it explains them, and I think it does, in a very readable and accessible and page-turning way.
Yeah.
But we don't just leave everything on the table and say the right have won. You know, right. People aren't capable of thinking. They are actually, and I think that popular political culture at the moment is totally disfigured by social media, but I don't think people are getting stupider.
No, but people seem to be. And by the way, the counter to all of this may well be the format we're engaged in right now. Because I do think, funnily enough, having said how everything is getting contracted, there does seem to be a growing appetite for long-form podcasts where people are talking at length about one or two issues.
Well, I mean, and even more so in America, where everyone is caricatured as a toothless hillbilly in a pickup married to their sisters, right?
Yeah.
Well, the podcast ecology of America is dominated by 3 to 4 hour long podcasts. Now that doesn't mean that everyone who listens to Joe Rogan or Lex Friedman or Sam Harris or whatever it is, you know, is a policy expert or anything approaching it. But the fact that they're listening tells you something.
Yeah.
You don't spend 3 hours of your life listening to anything.
So
if you're not interested.
The reductiveness is not necessarily on behalf of the audience, it's on behalf of the media.
I think that what happened was that partly progressive parties are to blame because they were terrified by the professionalism of the right. And so they exercised message discipline, and that was probably a necessary thing to do in the late 80s and the 90s. But where we've ended up once social media and broadband and so on came on stream is that everything was short and sharp and you know. So our colleague Alistair Campbell, who when he was running comms for Tony Blair, he would have what I think he called a message script, right? But he'd also explain it.
Yeah.
You know, he would. I mean, I know this because I was, calling him up as a columnist. And he'd say, well, this is what we're doing. Here's the line. But let me walk you through it.
Yeah.
And I don't see that's... I don't think that's a bad system.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's
but
inevitable.
Now we get 3-word slogans.
Take back control. Get Brexit done.
Yeah.
And, to be fair to Starmer, when he had just change... I thought, oh God, this just is just one. We're now one word. It's going to be a letter in the next election. Just choose a consonant. One vowel, Rachel. One vowel, consonant. But I don't think that. To be fair to him, he is guilty of that. What he is guilty of is not yet translating his technocratic expertise into an emotional narrative.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Right, quick break, then we're back with some more questions. From Mark in Braintree, Mark says, my social media timelines are full of conspiracy theories about the Trump shooting. It does all seem a bit, odd. Should I ignore all the speculation?
It's very difficult because literally within minutes of Trump having been shot, being reported on the all the news wires and news sites and TV channels and so on, I noticed that #staged was trending on X.
It was incredible.
It was immediate, and we moved to these things. I mean, I didn't have time to do it, but I was going to go and look up how quickly we moved to conspiracy theories on JFK's assassination in 1963. It wasn't that long, but it certainly wasn't the same day.
Yeah.
But we've gone full Dealey Plaza and, Grassy Knoll and Badge Man and Man with the Umbrella on all this already. And people, the Daily Mail, you'll be amazed to know, has been in the forefront of this.
Not the Mail.
I'm afraid so,
really?
man. Yes, your favourite newspaper.
God damn.
And it's been doing, especially online, lots of kind of... triddy, deranged kind of schematic graphics showing, how did what's his name, Thomas Crooks get from this place to this place? There was the crucial 30 minutes, and people are drawing up extended timelines that essentially prove that Biden knew about it and directed it. Indeed.
There was a congressman said literally that.
Literally said it. Biden sent the order. Biden sent the order. So. And there's also been some very sexist stuff about the fact that one of the Secret Service agents was a woman, right? People saying, oh, you can see she doesn't know how to handle a gun. Well, hold off. I think being in a situation like that is very difficult for anyone of whatever sex or background.
Yeah.
And so there was that. But my honest belief, I mean, now they've got into Thomas Crooks's phone, and it seems that he was basically, his search history suggests he was looking for places that Biden and Trump were going to appear, and Merrick Garland, the Democrat Attorney General. He was obviously just looking for
attention.
A big target, right? Yeah. I don't think this is ideological at all. Yeah. I think that there was a massive snafu at the site. It is true that not only the Secret Service but the associated forces, the tactical teams, should never have allowed him as close as he got, but he did.
And the weirdest thing for me is the video of people pointing at this idiot. As he's crawling along the top of the building.
Here's the thing: is that people do. Gerald Ford was shot at twice. Ronald Reagan was shot badly once. Yeah. There hasn't been a presidential candidate shot and hit for a long while. But the problem with a democracy is that people are exposed, and sometimes there are big mistakes, and this was a huge mistake. I mean, I suspect that the head of the Secret Service will have to resign.
Well, I mean, the single most ridiculous...
Or the health and safety.
The health and safety. It was a sloping roof, so they couldn't put anybody up there.
That was not a persuasive defence.
Teddy Roosevelt got shot once giving a speech.
I know, and he said, I'm going to carry on.
And it hit a sort, but it went into his chest.
Yes.
The bullet lodged in his chest.
There's been a lot
and he carried on for 81 minutes afterwards.
There have been a lot of extremely laboured references to that in the Milwaukee Republican Convention last week. Right. Yeah, oh God, I mean, you can imagine, right? The spirit of
Donald Trump ain't no
Teddy
Roosevelt.
Theodore Roosevelt stalks the convention halls and corridors. No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. I would ignore all the speculation because there's going to be so much more of it. People are going to write books about this guy. Someone's going to... He was in a BlackRock commercial.
No way.
But I think in the way that people...
Like an extra kind of...
Yeah. But people are instantly going, oh my God, it's the international...
George Osborne.
It's
George Osborne did
George Osborne or George Soros. Or I mean, you can basically now, with conspiracy theories, we deal with it all the time. You can really write what you like, right? And... I do think, I mean, not to get too priggish about it, but I actually think that we've got to think of a new term for conspiracy theories, because I think of conspiracy theories as basically funny. When I grew up, it was like UFOs and all that. But it's now a dominant part of our political culture, and kids have got to be taught to spot them, and and this has been an object lesson. That's in it. Right. Really something which could have almost plunged America into God knows what happened, because unfortunately they just didn't get the guy off the roof in time, and I really do believe that's all there is to it.
Yeah. Well, one of the weirdest facets of this story was on the back of our front page, on the back of your excellent article with your brilliant summary, which was "The bullet hit Trump, but it killed Joe Biden." Loads of people saying this is absolute bullshit. It wasn't a bullet that hit Trump.
Yes.
It was glass from the teleprompter. Who cares?
Well, indeed. I mean, I don't think that's much of a comfort for someone who's has a sniper firing at eight shots, and certainly no comfort for the family of the man who died and the two.
By the way, Trump has not. The family of the guy who died.
Unbelievable. I mean, Biden tried and the family wouldn't take the call, which I thought was sad. But the fact that Trump hasn't called him it tells you all you need to know.
That article where I can't remember where it was written, but it was upside down, because it was all about Biden trying to call and the woman saying that the wife, the widow, saying, with respect to my husband's politics, he wouldn't have wanted me to, so thank you, but no, Mr. President.
But the fact that
and the last line was that the family has not heard from Donald Trump at all.
Which is that's burying the...
Can you believe that?
If ever there was burying the lead, that's it.
Can you believe that he hasn't even put in the call?
Well, of course, because, I mean, this is a guy who finds people's deaths, the famous thing that General John Kelly, his former chief of staff, leaked and then admitted he'd leaked to the Atlantic, which was that standing at a military cemetery, he'd said, these losers? Why
Suckers
do they do
losers,
suckers and losers? And he didn't want to be photographed with, wounded veterans.
But the narcissism of the man.
Yeah.
All right, he's gone through a very horrible, traumatic experience.
Yeah.
Someone tried to kill him, but someone did die, and he's not even put in a bloody phone call.
And truly, every other politician I can think of, top of the list.
Yeah.
Of the call sheet.
Yeah, on your way to the hospital.
You get indeed. You get maybe you get checked up. You're fine, right? The minute that you can, and someone gives you a phone, you say, "Give me the number of the family."
Of course, of course. Mark, yes, ignore all the bullshit, please.
Absolutely.
Next question. Stella from Oxford writes, is there an analogy to be drawn from the muted emotional response to England's failure at the Euros and the muted emotional response to Starmer's landslide? I'm comparing them to the emotions around the Euros in 1996 and Blair in 1997. Everything felt a lot more exciting back then, or am I just getting old? It's interesting.
Well, thank you, Stella. That's a great question. And I share that. And I am getting old.
We are just getting old. Then.
But reading that question reminded me of something you said last week, which was that we are becoming, or we have become. I mean, it's not an irreversible process, but we have become more joyless since '96 and 3 Lions on a Shirt and Britpop and all the rest of it. And I think that I think it's true.
Yeah.
That I was fascinated by the way in which in '96 and '97. The whole phenomenon of Britain's cultural resurgence, doing well in the football, the song, Blair, it was all linked into a feeling of excitement, And the truth is that since then, and especially since 2016, the country has been to hell and back. Yeah. And so, electing Starmer was more of a kind of, please make them go away, the Tories. And I mean, I just think that I think you were right that there isn't at the moment the desire to draw connective tissue between as it were, the state of the nation and the state of our footballing prowess. I thought
it was conspicuous at the Euros, and I just wondered whether some of that was to do with expectation. It conformed to expectation, really, that we do quite well and then lose.
Yes, I mean that, which is in itself an extraordinary thing, which is that it is no longer remarkable that we get to the semis or indeed the finals, or in the case of the Lionesses, win international tournaments. So maybe that's part of it. But I think your joyless point is on the money, and I think that a country that has lost its capacity for joy, it needs help and has a problem. Yeah,
and maybe it's certainly not irrecoverable, is it?
No,
something will happen, won't it? Hopefully, something good will happen.
Yes, but only through doing stuff. Yeah, it won't come back of its own accord.
No. And also, what I'm slightly worried about is that looking down the event horizon, there's nothing big, unless I've forgotten something. There's nothing massive on the calendar like the Olympics, in 2012.
No. I mean, although boy did I read that one wrong. I thought the London Olympics were kind of that was the moment when it had all come together. Yeah. We'd been through Blair. Yeah. We'd got a Tory party in coalition that wasn't actually mad anymore. Yeah. And we were running this incredible Olympic Games in this great city. And it was Danny Boyle's opening ceremony. And, it is true. I mean, I've read it often enough that centrist dads are still, in Stratford.
Peak centrist
and dad are still in Stratford on the night of the opening ceremony, and there's there is a germ of truth in that.
It's been downhill
ever since, and the only thing that's consistent is bloody Farage is still around. But I think. Look, we will get it back. Of course we will.
Yeah.
We are optimists at the New European.
We're excited for the future.
Definitely.
Stella, thank you for your question. Last question, please. Talking of the Olympics.
I'm excited about the Paris Olympics as cultural bon viveurs. What a nice way of describing us. What can I see or do to get in the mood? Rachel from Birmingham, what do you reckon?
Well, go for an open air. I was very heartened to see that people are swimming in the Seine.
Yes,
for the first time, and apparently without any risk of E. coli or anything.
Well, you must be excited both as a sports fan, but also because Paris is your favourite city.
Paris is my romantic home, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, you must be... I mean, I love the Olympics. I've always loved the Olympics.
Yeah.
What can I see? Well, Rachel, one thing I'm going to recommend, or I did recommend in Friday's Culture newsletter, is a wonderful documentary about Daley Thompson, who, for those that don't know, was a twice gold medal winner in 1980 and 1984 Olympics in the decathlon.
Yeah. They don't do the decathlon?
Yeah, they do.
Oh, they do?
They do. It's, I mean, you know, and it is an absolutely extraordinary event. Yeah. And it's an hour and a half, and it really digs deep into what made him so special. It's got some great interviews in it, including Caitlyn Jenner.
Yes.
Who, as Bruce Jenner, had won in 1976. And she describes how when she, then still Bruce, was winning, this young kid from Britain who was doing his first Olympics kept coming up to her, as she now is, and saying, how do I train? Yeah. And and Jenna saying, I'm trying to win the gold. Could you leave me alone? But very, very gracious and kind about him, and apparently said in 1977, I didn't know this, that the future she left athletics and went off to the life we now all know about. Yeah. But said the future of the decathlon is Daley Thompson. Amazing, and it's hard, like for younger listeners, it's hard to equate who the kind of place that Daley Thompson held in our national psyche, because he was a beautiful, black, powerful man, wasn't he? At a time of racial disharmony. There's racism today, but in those days, I remember, and one of the things in the documentary is the hard time he got from the press, and there's no question that it was connected to his ethnicity. So, for example, on the podium, I think in '84, he whistled the national anthem, which is a bit cheeky, right? But the next day, the tabloids had "Jump," and they wouldn't have done that if he'd been white, right? It's a little bit naughty, but it's hardly a hanging offence. And he had to go through that. But also it reminded me of the extent to which, on that front, the 80s were an incredibly divisive and, and in many ways horrible period. But they were also incredibly exciting. And Daley Thompson incarnated that excitement. This kid from Notting Hill, before Notting Hill was what people mean by Notting Hill then. Yeah. And now, his father was shot dead in a shootout, and brought up in great poverty, sent off to boarding school by the local authority, and becomes this sort of giant symbol of a nation rising up. Yeah. He really was. There were the middle distance gang. There was Seb Coe, Steve Ovett, and Cram. Yeah, Steve Cram. Yeah. Steve Cram, who are brilliant. Yeah. But for me, I think Seb Coe's records were amazing, but there was something about Daley Thompson that was just magical. And then weirdly, we were discussing this earlier before the podcast started. Weirdly, fell off the radar completely. And so that's one of the reasons it's a wonderful documentary, because it brings him back into the limelight. And there's lots of people who have stayed in the limelight, like Sharon Davis, who won a silver in 1980, Tessa Sanderson, who won a gold in the javelin in 1984, talking about their love of him and how much he meant to them and means to them. And they've all stayed in touch. That's great. And it just, I'm very pleased, because I've always been offended by the fact that he's not a knight. Yeah. That's crazy. He's a CBE, right? But he should be, if we're going to have these things, right? Which is up for debate, but if we're going to have these, he should bloody well be Sir Daley Thompson. Well, if Gareth Southgate's on the honours list, right, which I'm sure he probably will be, I hope so. Then and for good reason, Daley Thompson should definitely be. He was double gold medal winner. He did what in consecutive Olympics? What is almost. That it's almost impossible. And the hardest discipline there is. Had he not been as badly injured as he was, he might have won in 1988 at Seoul, because he came fourth. Did he? With multiple injuries, right? Watching him, fight through the pain.
Yeah.
You just realise the guy was a competition machine.
Yeah.
Right. So he should be included in when people talk about Usain Bolt or Carl Lewis or people Olympians. He's up there,
Yeah. Right, Sakir, we want Sir Daley.
Sakir, we want Sir Daley, and it's on iPlayer. And Rachel, if you're looking for a sort of amuse-bouche for the Paris Olympics, watch the future Sir Daley Thompson on iPlayer. It's great.
Fantastic recommendation. Rachel, thank you for your question. As always, get in questions, please, to 2matts@tnepublishing.com. That's the number 2, MATTS, at tnepublishing.com. Please remember our subscription offer. If you like this show and you want to support it, the very best way you can do that is by taking out a subscription to the New European. You can do that from as little as £1 a week, and just for £2 a week you get the newspaper delivered to your door every single week, and I can promise you that's
a singular pleasure.
Just getting it dropping through your letterbox.
I wait by the doorbell, wait for it to arrive.
So get your door box open and subscribe to the New European. Go to www.theneweuropean.co.uk.
Britain's going door box crazy.
2 Matts. There's a link in the show notes. Thank you as ever to our production team, led by Matt Hill and Ollie Peart at Rethink Audio.
And have a great Sunday.
Have a fantastic Sunday.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Monday.